Hi, I'm Bob Bourke, the mechanic at large. On this week's show, we're going to do some work on a thing that most of you have got in your cars, and that's an automatic transmission. An automatic transmission is a very delicate and very sophisticated hydraulic machine that's been developed over the last 20 or 30 years and is really almost perfected. As I say, they're very complicated inside, but there's quite a few simple things that we can teach you about this transmission. Today we'll give you kind of an overview of it, and we're going to install a new filter, a new gasket in the bottom sump. This is something you can do yourself, and it's a good maintenance item. So, like I say, we'll come back in a couple minutes after this message, and we'll get to work on that automatic transmission. Welcome back. Like I said, today we're going to give you kind of an overview on automatic transmissions and show you how to change the screen in the bottom end of them. First of all, I'm going to draw a picture and explain to you on a kind of a general basis what an automatic transmission does. Now this is going to be a kind of a rough drawing. I don't know it's going to be quite that rough, but they kind of look like that, and you can see that from the one we have on the bench. As I said before, they're a very sophisticated hydraulic component of a car, and here's what happens in an automatic transmission. In the front part we have a round kind of a thing here we call a torque converter, and this basically right here bolts onto your engine, on the flywheel of your engine, and this piece of the case bolts onto the back of your engine. Now how the transmission works is, in real general layman's terms, the torque converter is simply two propellers facing each other. And it's like the effect you have if you've got a fan in your house and you put another fan in front of it. The one fan that's turning will make the other one turn. So just to keep that really simple, a torque converter is a non-serviceable item. But it's just one fan inside of another fan, and when the one turns because your engine drives it, it makes the other one follow it. And it's filled with oil. Now the whole transmission is filled with oil. From there we go into the main part of the transmission, and right in this area in here, we have some hydraulic pumps. Now, what we use those for, we'll explain to you right now. On the bottom of the transmission, we have a pan, and that's where we're going to work today. Now, this is somewhat like an engine because it's a pressed steel pan as well, and this is full of automatic transmission fluid, or it's supposed to be full. Down in here, we have a pickup, and we have a pump in here that takes this oil and feeds it up to this pump. Now, what this pump does is this takes this oil and puts it under high pressure and pumps it in here. And in here we have a series of clutch packs and bands. And what a clutch pack is, I'll draw you just a rough idea of a clutch pack. A clutch pack this is about actual size, what's in your transmission. We have a shaft going in, the shaft coming out, and in here we have a series of discs. All right, and these are friction discs, just like an old clutch you found in your old Model T Ford. Well, not your Model T, but one of the later ones anyway. We have a hydraulic piston in here that pushes against these discs to tighten them up and lock them up. Now when this pump, say your front pump, you put your car into drive, what it does is it feeds oil down this tube, and that'd be coming in here. It puts pressure on this piston and makes this piston move across, and it tightens all these discs together and makes this shaft turn, okay, or makes this shaft rotate like that. So that's basically how an automatic transmission works. Oil comes out of the sump into the pump, locks up the clutch packs, and puts power out down there to your drive line so you can spin your tires. All right? That's a basic overview of a transmission. Now there's a couple things I'm going to show you about this transmission on the bench, and then we'll go underneath our car and we'll change this screen. Now as I said, there's very few things you can do at home or we could show you how to do in this show. Your torque converter is non-serviceable. The internal parts of your transmission are best left to professionals. But this little job that we're going to do today with the sump and screen is something you should be doing at about 24,000 miles in the American system, or what we would call, I guess, 40,000 clicks. Okay, something you should do at about that time. You should change your oil, change the sump and screen. One other note, automatic transmissions run automatic transmission oil, and it's a specially formulated oil, and you should never use any other kind in a transmission. That transmission oil runs at probably about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And in most automatic transmissions we'll find a couple little fittings which I'll show you on the tranny they go way down here to your radiator. And there's a little compartment in the end of your radiator that's actually a transmission cooler. Now, when you think about this, you're using your antifreeze and your radiator in your car to cool your transmission oil. So that tells you something, because your car is normally running about 190 to 200 degrees. So if you're cooling the oil in your transmission with that, that means your transmission is working pretty hard. It's up around the 300 degree mark. There's one other simple little thing that I'll show you on the car that you can change, and that's a vacuum modulator. And it sits back here on most cars. We'll show you that on the bench as well. But that vacuum modulator is controlled by your engine, and it tells your transmission how hard you've got your foot on the gas pedal. Because when you step on the gas in your engine, your vacuum drops. When that happens, that modulator makes your transmission shift down so you can get that big, you know, and get at it. But that's the modulator does that. So let's just go over to our bench here, and we'll show you a few things in this transmission and a few simple maintenance items before we get down to doing the sump and screen. There's our transmission. Now, if you can relate this to my drawing at all, it may be difficult. Let's start right at the front end. There's the torque converter I mentioned to you. If we can get a close-up shot of that, you can see it's just a big round pot of a thing. This piece right in here sits in the center of your flywheel on your engine, okay? And your drive from your engine is done with these 3 holes with 3 little bolts. I haven't even got one around here, but you can see by the size of the bolts that there's not a very big bolt that's taking your whole car down the road, all right? Your engine hooks onto that and drives that torque converter. Let's get it out of the way. Pull it out. See what it is, as I said. It's a non-serviceable item, just a big welded steel pot, and basically just consider it 2 fans turning against each other in the presence of oil. Moving in here, if we get a shot of this, this is the front end of your automatic transmission, and right in here we have a seal. And if you've got a leak in that seal, you'll have oil underneath, of course, falling out underneath your car. And as we've mentioned before on shows, the way to identify that is to look for the color of it, because that oil is red. Right? Transmission oil is always red. So that's the seal that's causing the problem if you've got a front leak. In here, this circle of bolts, right behind here is the front pump in the transmission. As I said, that's really a non-serviceable item for most people, but if you have to take it to a transmission shop and have it rebuilt, that's where they go in through. This around the outside is what we call bell housing, or bolts onto your bell housing, and that's what ties the transmission to your engine. Now, let's go around the side and look at a couple other things. This is the dipstick tube, and this can sometimes start to leak. And if you've got a leak right in this area of your transmission, it's because there's a little O-ring on this dipstick tube. You can get a shot of that. There's a little O-ring right there that needs to be replaced. And these are basically just a pressed-in affair. You just put them down and wiggle them into place. So if you have a leak around that area, what you've got to do is unbolt up higher here. This is probably held on your transmission or behind your motor somewhere. Wiggle that tube out like that and replace that O-ring. That's that. We'll get that out of the way. Right in here you have 2 little ports, and these are the ones that I mentioned. There's 2 little tubes run out of here, and they go up to your transmission, and this is how or up to your radiator to cool your transmission oil, and that's how you keep your transmission cool. The other thing I mentioned was your modulator, and on this transmission it's right back here. That's your vacuum modulator. Now basically, if you're having any kind of shifting problems with your transmission, this is a good bet at about $15 to try. All right? One other thing now, I mentioned this pan on the bottom, and I've got the one off this transmission. I'm going to roll it up on the bench like that, and there's what we're going to see when we go underneath our car. I took this pan off, and you can see by looking at this pan with all the dirt and filth that's in there, all right, that's what's going to plug up that screen in your car, and that's why we want to go inside that and change that screen today. I'll set that aside. In here, this is the piece that we'll be changing. And this is not exactly the same as the car we're going to be working on. This is a different model of transmission. All right, but there it is. That's the screen. We're going to take that off and change it. And all this is basically, to us again, for what we can show you today, is non-serviceable. But that's what we'll be doing today. We'll be taking this pan off, taking this screen off, changing that, putting that on new, screwing it back together, putting the pan back on, and filling it back up with oil. We're going to take a break right now and move underneath our car. We've got our kit here, and that, as I say, this will be the one we're putting in. It's basically the same equivalent of that. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to move underneath our car, and we'll get to work right after this message. welcome back. We're underneath our car. I didn't have to lift this one today. The hoist worked pretty well. And we're down here where we're going to do the job we just talked about on the bench. Now this is about the newest transmission you're ever going to see. It looks pretty clean and tidy underneath here, but it's definitely got some leaks. And that's something we're not going to look at today. But this transmission needs a little work on both ends. Here's the pan we talked about. We're going to take it off. Now some makes and models of cars have a drain plug down in here. This one doesn't, so that means this is going to be a messy job. We're just going to start taking off all these bolts around the outside. And what we want to do is plan this out a little bit. I'm going to put those in my pocket. We're going to plan this out a little bit, folks, so that when you take this off, all this hot oil in here isn't going to land on you. So we'll take all our bolts out except for one corner, and then hopefully the other corner will fall down, and the oil will come out of there. And you can't see what I'm doing too much here because I'm taking off the ones away from you first. Oh, right in my oil can. Put that in the pocket. This little speed wrench is a handy thing to have. You're going to need a socket to do this. You can't get at these with open end or box end wrenches. So you're going to need a socket set of some kind. You can do these with a ratchet, but we don't have a 1 hour show. Oh. As I said, anytime, there comes our first leak. We've got some of our bolts loosened. Let's get our can here, see if we can get a little on our cameraman today. Okay, as we loosen this, like I said, we're going to get some oil. We'll just drop this a little more, trying to catch most of this. We're not going to reuse this, because doing this job we're only looking at 2 or 3 quarts. And it's not worth saving and contaminating your transmission to put it back in. As I said, these things are very delicate instruments, a hydraulic transmission. Very durable, but they are susceptible to dirt. Now, we'll let that down a little more. Okay, you can see I'm taking off the bolts on your side now. I'm trying to keep this cameraman down here clean so he can keep going here and get a good picture of this for you. Did I get you yet? Well, Roger. Well, maybe we'll get him yet, folks. Now, 2 bolts left. A little more oil. I don't want any hot oil treatment on my hair. I like the Christians in the old days of Rome, boiled in oil. Now we get to the last bolt, and I'm going to perform a very difficult maneuver here called holding the pan up with one hand and taking the bolt off with the other. I may have to call for my assistant. Is Fifi here today? No. Came in late again. All right. This is full of oil, and it's a little bit warm. Let's just take this down ever so gently, I think. Oh. Well, that wasn't too gentle, but we're going to get it down. I've got a little bit of interference here from my back transmission mount. We just made an awful mess, and I did get the treatment too. There's the pan we took off. I told you we were going to get dirty today. Okay, let's just get the rest of that dripped off a little bit. Isn't mechanicking fun? Aren't you glad you know how to do this stuff? All right, let's just set that down there. I'm going to get rid of this bucket of oil, what's left in the bucket and not in my hair. And on our camera lens. Now, I've brought a couple rags here because we want to quicken this up. We're just going to wipe this off real good right about now so we can see what we're doing. Now there's our screen, there's the filter, and that's what we're after. Got a screwdriver in my pocket, and we're just going to unscrew that. There's 2 screws and just a gasket above it, and we'll show that to you as we get it off. I'll drop that there for now. One more screw, and now we'll have just a little small flood here again. And what's happening here now is that the oil that's up in the transmission body is draining down. There's the piece we saw on the bench. Doesn't it look a little different when you've got oil on the camera lens and all over me? And just to make a note, you see a little electric wire running in here. You can get a shot of that, and what that is an electric downshift. That's an electric downshift wire, and there's a little solenoid here. And this car's got an electric downshift, so when you punch in the gas, it's electrically controlled, and that's what gives you the kick down. All right, it gives you what we call passing gear. There's a little gasket right there. We're just going to take it off and change it as well with our new screen. I'll take that off and drop it into our mess here. And I'll show you the new filter we're going to put on. We'll line it up to make sure it's the same as the old one. There it is, and if you can see the material, it's just kind of a felt, kind of a paper type stuff, all made out of felt. And on this side of it is where that little gasket goes. All right, and it just fits on like that. I'm not going to use any gasket glue or anything because these are sealing surfaces, but I'm going to start the screws through it and then we'll put it up there. If I can find them. And all the wreckage here and oil. I'm going to be cleaning the floor for a while. I just got some more in the hair. I hope our sponsor's a shampoo company today because I think we'll be looking for some here. Myself and our underneath cameraman anyway. All right. We're going to put this little screen back up there. And I'm going to try and show you how I'm doing this while I'm doing it. All right, let's make sure we got our little gasket lined up there. We've got to screw in through it to start. And we'll just get it up there, get the screwdriver underneath it, and hold your mouth right. And we got, oh, I missed the hole. This is the way it happens in real life, folks. This is the way it happens in real life. Live television. There's one screw started. Tighten these evenly, don't kill them. We're not doing Mr. Universe here. We just want them tight. Now sometimes you'll find in a transmission, if you're having problems of the nature we talked about with some slipping and that, you'll come in here and you'll find that this transmission filter is loose. And if that's happened, sometimes you'll be drawing air rather than drawing transmission fluid through this filter. And that can give you a problem. All right, just snug those up. Good. Now, one other thing I want to point out up here is that we have to have this surface very clean. All right, and this one is because we're going to put that new gasket back in here and seal that up. Now this is clean. Let's go down and have a look at our pan for a minute. We've got a new gasket on here and we're running short of time. I'm just going to throw that out of the way for now. Get rid of a few of these oily rags. If we can get a shot of that. Okay, there's the pan that we just took off. And you can see that this is relatively clean. All right, and the gasket's in good shape. And I've got this new one I've been wearing around my neck here. And what we would normally do is take a gasket scraper and scrape all that off of there. All right, and put that new gasket on. Because this one's good, I think I'll leave it alone. It's relatively new. But what I'm going to do is take and wipe that pan out really well. Okay, you can see all that black junk, I guess we'll call it, for lack of a better word we can use in television. And clean that out really well. Whoop. Wash that out. You can use kerosene or solvent of any kind to wash that out, even a drop of gas if you're very, very careful. All right, we'll wipe that out, and as I say, we're ready to reinstall that. We've changed the sump and screen. I'm going to go ahead and put that back on while we take a break, and when we come back, we'll put our car down and show you how to put your oil back in and check that out. We'll be right back after this message. Welcome back. That was quite a mess, wasn't it? Okay, we got our car down on the ground right now, and what we have to do after we do this job is not check our transmission and start dumping oil in. We dump 2 quarts in first. I got a transmission funnel here. Your transmission filler is almost always at the back of your engine. It's the one that's got the dipstick in it marked transmission. All right, we've got to have one of these funny little funnels, or you can borrow your wife's baking funnel if you want to. There's 1 quart, or 1 liter. I don't know what these are. Quarts or liters. Dump 2 of these in, like I say, before we start it up, and that's because we have no oil in the transmission right now because we drained it all out, all over me and the cameraman. Glug, 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 glug. We'll get rid of that. Let that drain down good, because these type of funnels are a little slower than you are pouring. So drain that down. Put 2 quarts in it before you start it. And what we're going to do after this now is start that car up and let it idle for about 2 minutes, and then we'll check it again and keep topping up until we've got it full. Let's just go back over one thing we did today. All right, there's the pan that we were using. As we mentioned, there's that little screen. As you can see by this screen, this one was in good shape, a relatively good condition. Wasn't very dirty, but sometimes you'll find these at a lot of miles. They're really filthy, and if they do plug up, they'll give you problems. Remember that little gasket we talked about that goes right in there? It's very critical to have that in there and have it in good condition, because if it isn't there, what will happen if your oil's a little bit low, your transmission will draw air over top of this. It'll suck air, and if it gets there, it doesn't get oil, and it can't lock those clutch packs up we talked about. Clean this other area up real well. As we mentioned, around the outside here, you want that really clean, like I've got it here. There's a little raised ridge around there, and that holds the gasket. And one other thing I want to point out to you, we've got a gasket with a cut-off corner here. That's our new one. Don't be a dummy, all right? Look at this now. I put this gasket on here myself, and I said, I've got the wrong gasket. And I said some unkind things about my local neighborhood parts store, all right? Don't be a dummy. Turn it over. Those guys usually know more than we give them credit for, so turn it over. You shouldn't need glue on this type of installation. If you can hold it in place, just get it up and stick it up there. As I say, that's our show on transmissions, and I hope you learned something. You learned a little trick now about how maybe you can save yourself some big dollars in some repair, and we've shown you a job that should be done, as I said, about every 24,000 miles or every 40,000 kilometers. We're going to finish this job up now, and as soon as I'm done that, I'm going to head for the shower. I got my shampoo here, and you'll be wanting to do that too. But thanks for joining us this week on Mechanic at Large. See you next week.